Beloved in the Lord, our sermon text for this evening is taken from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 26, verses 57 and 58. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. This is the word of our Lord. Can I ask you to think for just a moment? And I want you to think about something that causes you fear. What is something that causes you fear? Honestly, I don't want us to think about it too long, right? But let me ask, if you don't mind, is there anyone who would be willing to share? Is there something that causes you fear?
Loss of income, loss of job.
The loss of income, the loss of a job. And with that fear, and if that was to become a reality, right, all of these other fears that are just waiting to creep up and break through, oh, they're there. Maybe some of you are thinking, well, I didn't think I had a fear until the pastor asked me to share my fear. Now I can think of one. Right? But the reality is we have fears in life. There are things that we're afraid of, and sometimes it's something that even as much as we can prepare for it, or try to prepare for it, as much as we try to be ready, or think that we can overcome it, until that moment actually happens, perhaps, and we're faced with that fear, right? Maybe then we're led to realize just how maybe terrified, or when facing that fear, how helpless we were to really overcome it. I don't know. The truth is that in life, we all have fears, and those fears, they change as we change in life. As our status, our relationships change, whether it's going through school, or just starting a career, or in the midst of a career, or starting a family, or a loved one is sick. Or perhaps we have just received news that we have some illness or sickness. We're waiting for answers. Right? The point is we have fears. We have them in life, but we also have them as Christians. Don't we? We have fears as Christians. And that's something we're going to look at tonight. The fearful life as a Christian. Why do we have these fears? What causes these fears? But more importantly, where do we turn when faced with those fears? See, the disciples, they had a time in their lives, in their ministries, where they weren't very fearful. When things were going well, and all of the crowds were coming to see Jesus, right? When people were traveling, and the churches were packed, and all the stomachs were full, and everyone was happy and content, and people were cheering when they saw Jesus, life was good. They didn't have anything to fear. Wow, how quickly that changed. How quickly that changed. In our Passion reading, when that mob came and arrested Jesus, when they bound him, when they were going to lead him away to put him on trial, all of a sudden, everything that they had been experiencing for the past 3 years as these close disciples and students of Jesus, everything that they had witnessed of Jesus showing his power, and yet now, when he had that perfect moment to display it, he does nothing but he allows himself to be bound and led away. Fear. They weren't expecting this, no matter how many times Jesus told them. No matter how many times he warned them, and even when he, sometimes it seemed a little bit more maybe hidden, not as clear, but even when he outright told them, this is what's going to happen, until it actually happened. Fear grips them. And we see Peter, especially tonight as we journey with him, we see Peter and how this fear led to this distant disciple. Well, while the disciples and while Peter was afraid, there were others who were filled with joy. Right? The enemies of Jesus, they had been waiting for this moment, and finally the day had come. Finally, they were able to march into the Garden of Gethsemane, and when Judas betrayed his rabbi, his teacher, finally thought they had it. We read about that. We read that then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and elders had gathered. Jesus, he had to face them alone. But as he was led away, he wasn't completely alone. There was still someone who was kind of there. That was Peter. Peter was following him at a distance, we read, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end, to see the outcome. Peter kept his distance, that far off disciple. Sometimes we too are distant disciples. Why? What is it that leads us to not be right there at Jesus' side, walking with him? What causes us to be lurking in the shadows? Well, that changes as well, doesn't it? It changes in time. It changes on circumstances. Sometimes, perhaps for students, right? You've grown up in a Christian home. Maybe you've even gone to a Christian elementary school and high school, but perhaps now you're starting to branch out even more than you were before. Maybe now you're even having more relationships and more friendships with people who don't share that same faith. And when a conversation comes up about spiritual things, which maybe even kind of surprises you, right? Because you're almost taught, a couple things you don't talk about, and one of them is religion, politics, but somehow this conversation starts up, and ultimately leads to the end where everyone seems to be in agreement that it doesn't really matter what you believe as long as you have faith, because, and be a good person, and all roads lead to heaven. And then there's that moment. Do you stand up or even stay seated, but stick your neck out a little bit to share what you believe? How that's not true. That's not true that all these roads lead to the same place. In fact, Jesus says, I am the way, there is no other way. He's the truth, he's the light. And it's not just students and the friendships they have, it's all of us. Because I imagine all of us have family members or friends, and we find ourselves in those situations or those times. Maybe it's even just around the dinner table sometimes. And you're just having fun and fellowshipping and talking, and perhaps something comes up. Maybe it's a discussion someone's been talking about this religious book they've been reading. And ultimately, right, that's nice. I mean, you have your religious book, right, the Bible, but it's just one of many religious books that teaches us these important spiritual truths. And the spotlight's on us. What will happen? Will I be a distant disciple? Will I not stand up and share what I believe in, the truth of the Bible, and how these other spiritual books aren't leading people to God? In fact, if anything, leading them further away from God. Sometimes it's maybe the hardships or just the positions we are put in to witness our faith, and sometimes that causes fear. Fear of what we'll say, how we'll say it, whether we'll get it wrong, or maybe even more importantly, how people will react to what I say. It's not just those instances. There's other things that cause people to be distant disciples. God willing, and I pray it certainly never happens at this place or to any of you. But we know it happens around the world, and I can't just say around the world because it happens in our own country, where some people have that moment where it really is a life or a death situation. Of who do you believe? And confessing that faith has led many to the loss of their life here on earth. Those are hardships. Those are trials. Those are difficulties. But there's one other thing I want us to think about when it comes to distant discipleship. I don't always think it's the hard things. I don't always think it's the things we have to sacrifice. Sometimes I think distant discipleship is caused by the good things in life. Sometimes it's when life is going great. When work is going so well that I can work overtime. When the family is so blessed. And on the weekends, we're getting to travel. When there's Winter Olympics or just there's a great lineup right now in spring and there's so many good shows to watch, there are so many things here on earth, even blessings, that lead us away from our Lord, away from our Savior, away from more time being in Him. Sometimes I think it's the fear of sacrificing those other idols in our lives, those other things that we enjoy doing. Sometimes it's those that cause distant discipleship. The sad truth when it comes to distant discipleship is when we distance ourselves from the Lord, whether it is by fear of persecution or just fear of losing something, a pleasure that we enjoy doing. That's sinful. And the longer one distances themselves from the Lord, the sad truth is it's possible to remove yourself forever. And so what do? Right? That won't happen to us, dear friends. That won't happen to us. And why it's this, when we have these fears, where do we turn? Well, this Lenten season, when faced with the fear of distant discipleship, and perhaps maybe thinking of the things in our lives that have distanced us from God and His Word, remember this. It's now and at this time that we remember to turn evermore to the cross. We turn to our Savior and we're reminded of what He has done for us at this time during this Lenten season. We're reminded of how Jesus bore all of our sins, took all of our sins upon Himself, included those sins of fear that have led us to distance ourselves from God. He paid for those sins on the cross. And it's God who comes to us in His Word again and again, and He tells us, fear not. He wants to remove anything that causes fear, any anxiety in our life, so that we won't be far away from Him, but that we will be drawn close to Him. Hear these words from Isaiah 41. Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. How comforting it is to know that God is there to give us the strength and words when we do have an opportunity to witness our faith. In Isaiah 43:1, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. How comforting to know that God says, you are my own in baptism. I have made you. And so there is nothing and no one who can take you away. Not even if they take your life itself. God's fear nots, they echo throughout Scripture to reassure you and to bring you comfort. Fear, our fear, it has to bow down before God's fear nots. Jesus, He draws us close. He draws us close and He reminds us who we are, that we are His redeemed children, restored and forgiven. And then he says this. Not only does he say, fear not, but he says, follow. And that's what we are blessed to do. We are blessed to do that once again this year and tonight as we follow him to the cross and we see the amazing love of God that sacrificed his own life so that you could have life with him forever. And we follow him to the tomb. We follow him to the tomb where we see all of our sins were laid and were covered and buried and left there. No longer to be held against us. We follow him as God calls us to live as his children, to live as ones who have a new heart. A heart no longer burdened and overwhelmed by fears, but knowing that our lives and our futures are eternal. It has already been won for us. It's all in God's hands. Peter followed at a distance. And he followed at a distance to see, it says, the outcome. He wanted to see the end. As Peter watched, and as we'll be hearing more this season, he saw the outcome, the end that in his mind was the worst possible end. But what Peter would later understand, and what we know now, is that that outcome that led Jesus to the cross was really the best outcome for all of us. It was the necessary outcome. It was his Father's will. I don't know what fears you all have, but I know that we have them in different ways. I want you to take just a moment now and think on your Savior. Think on your Savior and how he gave his life to take away those fears, those doubts, those times of worry. To think of how your Savior and how his victory on the cross has defeated your enemy's Savior. How he really can take away our fears, even the fear of death itself. Think on Jesus. Think on Jesus not just tonight, but each and every day. Think on the one who has forgiven us for being distant disciples. Who draws you close. Who says, child,